This is Dave at AFX Title and TitleSearch.com. I don't know what's the deal with all the real estate investment fraud recently. We have a lot of cases where title search clients have come to us to verify their investments in real estate as attached to some investment scheme that they've been involved with, or in our research and investigative agency, we are trying to recover assets from people who are defrauded as part of a real estate investment. So a real estate investment comes one of two ways. You put money in, it's pooled up, and the group buys real estate. That's normally something that's going to require a securities dealer license or a securities notification or disclosure for that investment. In many cases, the investment is presented to the investor as a directly titled property. So you put money in, your name goes on the title for a property, and then the profit is distributed to that person. It's many cases distributed to affinity groups. It may be a religious group, somebody's in your church trying to present this this investment, maybe in a work environment, maybe in an ethnic neighborhood in a certain town. Either way, these investments are presented as a directly titled investment with a high rate of return. So the question is, once you're in that investment, take a look to see, is that title, first of all, put in the name of the investor? Is it actually titled in your name? Secondly, is it pledged to more than one person, pledged more than once? We're finding in some of these investment schemes that become fraud, one property is promised to 3 or 4 or 5 people, and the money, who knows what happens to it. It usually goes south. Usually the fraudster takes off with it or use some to pay returns on newer investors or older investors. So that title that's pledged to you, make sure it's actually in your name, and make sure it's not in more than one person's name. The escrow company who does the closing on that property, make sure they have the right instructions of putting a title in your name and not somebody else's. And when it's done, that you get a copy of that deed to make sure that those instructions were followed through property. And make sure if there's title insurance, it's in your name. It's not in the name of the investment company or the investment guru who's putting all this together. Take a look to see if there are prior transfers of that property that have to do with the investment company, or even subsequent transfers. So you buy an investment, you put in your money, you get a property, see if there's been prior flips or transfers of that property that show maybe somebody else is supposed to have the deed and they don't. Or after you buy it, make sure it's not flipped to somebody else without your permission. That may be happening if the principal is also an agent or a trustee for that property. That investor group may be allowed to flip that property or sign your name if they have a power of attorney for real estate transactions. Is there a blanket mortgage on all their properties? That could encumber your property as well. And when you buy a property, be sure that all prior loans are cleared, and that you don't sign any type of subordination agreement for prior loans, prior ownership, because again, that's going to encumber your ownership rights in that property. Sometimes you might want to get good legal advice to make sure that all these things are followed through on. If nothing else, get a good title search on the properties you're supposed to own through this investment to make sure you actually own them, that nobody else does, and that there's no mortgages or liens that you're not aware of that attach to your property. The high rates of return are great, but if they're really that good, then the investment company would be taking them for themselves and not spreading it around to other people. So if you can verify that the title's in your name, it's not pledged to other people, you might have a good chance of avoiding investment fraud. But in most cases, these fraud cases have properties that never end up titled the way they're supposed to, and then it's up to the investors to become victims to try to get their money back after the fact.